We're
before
live, just so you know. You got a light?
I got a light in the back, so it keeps it consistent.
Yeah,
So
I got three. I got three, and it's just
okay, then I don't know what's up then.
I got to get the one that you. I got to get the one that you got.
There you go. We'll trade notes later.
Yeah, cool. Okay, we're live, and let me just hit the recording, and we'll make this official. Okay, here we go. Hello and welcome to the Mastermind Body and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. We are facing extreme censorship alongside many other truth seekers out there. If you want to support the show, please go over to mattbelair.com and sign up for the email list. Become a member of the community by donation or free to access exclusive and censorship-free content. And most importantly, consider doing 3 kind acts today wherever you are in the world. Today's guest is a clinical psychologist with a doctorate from Azusa Pacific University, practicing in the East Bay area and leading conferences and retreats around the globe. Between his years in private practice, hospital work, and 8 years as a mental health staff sergeant in the U.S. Army, he's empowered hundreds of individuals, families, organizations, and teams to develop authentic relationships and grow into their best selves. He is the author of the new book, Choose Better, the Optimal Decision-Making Framework. Welcome to the show, Dr. Timothy Yen.
I'm so excited to be here, Matt. Ready to have some truth-seeking conversations.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to have you on the show. Your book dropped today, so maybe that's why I aced the intro. It's very rare that it goes that smoothly. So I'm honored to have you here, man. Congrats on launching the book. I love the title. It's super important. So why don't we just talk a little bit about your journey, like being in the Army, all the mental health work you've done, being a psychologist, the crazy times we're in. I don't even know where to get started, but let's start with a little bit about you, and then we'll dive into the book and the work.
Well, it sounds like you want an origin story, and I'm sure you don't want me to go too far back to like kindergarten or something. So maybe we'll start with my career development. And the funny story behind that is I never wanted to be a psychologist. Like that was not, I didn't know that existed. Let's just put it out that way. I wanted to be a news anchor. I think that was like my dream job. Like I wanted to report the news, and I enlisted in the Army hoping to be a journalist. Turns out I'm super colorblind. Like, and I didn't even know this. It like suddenly hit me that I was super colorblind, and journalist off the list. Apparently you need color vision to be a journalist. So what did I have left over? Mental health. Mental health does not see colors. So I was like, that sounds like a pretty sweet gig. People just tell me their sob stories and I just listen, I nod, I chit chat with them and they pay me? Done. Sign me up. And then of course, when I started doing it, I was like, oh, there's a lot more to this job. People are really hurting. Like this stuff actually works. And so when I did a stint in the Army, loved the work, found it super meaningful and transformative. I was like, hey, I got to go back to school, get equipped so I can do this for real. So that's how I landed becoming a psychologist.
Wow. Well, I love the brief origin story. I wouldn't mind if we went back to kindergarten, but it's kind of funny. Yeah. How old were you when you figured out you're colorblind?
Officially by the government, 17 and a half. That's what they diagnosed me. They gave me the ugly stamp on my MEPS paperwork. They're like, this kid can't do hundreds of jobs because he's colorblind. So
well, this is a side note, but like, I had that like inquiry, like imagine blue to you was like yellow to someone else, and even giving you this example is ridiculous that you're legally colorblind, but maybe the sound of like a flute is a drum to someone else. You know what I mean? It's just like how we perceive reality is very interesting. And so you're an expert in this going into mental health. So I love the title of the book, The Optimal Decision Framework. So let's begin with, why do I constantly make poor decisions?
Matt, how much time do we have?
We're going to need a day.
Do we start?
We're going to need a day seminar.
That's going to be a workshop on its own. I mean, in the book, I definitely illustrate some key reasons why people make poor choices. And the book really is geared toward two types of people, if you want to call it that. It's the indecisive person that can't make a call, doesn't make a choice, or the person that makes a choice too quickly without actually thinking through, is this really what I want to do? And there's all sorts of reasons why people don't make decisions, and there's all sorts of reasons why people make them impulsively and later on regret it. So I could definitely dive into some of the mindset kind of stuff. Sometimes it's emotions that kind of, what I say about emotions is it's great to have as a passenger, but not great as a driver. Like if it's the main driver and you kind of forsake the rest of the thought process, then we are more likely to make regrettable choices. Uh, Family backgrounds, taboo things, not wanting to be judged, fear of disapproval. There's all sorts of reasons why people don't make authentic choices.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that there's a lot out there. Like when I'm working with a lot of people, a lot of time if we're working on their life purpose or something like that, it's fear, and they get into indecision, especially when they're good at something because they feel personally attached to what they're putting out, and so they kind of get stuck in that. So that's not ideal. But maybe you can, yeah, you broached it a little bit. But what is like the basis of you seen of when we make a poor decision? Because I feel like mistakes are okay. You know what I mean? We learn
Yes,
as
they
humans, as
are.
long as we're moving in a direction that we're making the decision, we honor it. It's not harming anyone. It comes from a good space, and we fail. That's a part of life. But what constitutes just like a poor decision? And you're like, oh man, I regret that one. What the hell was I thinking?
A big one I would say is doing something that goes against your own integrity and your own values. That's when we start getting into that poor choices category. You're absolutely right, Matt. People make mistakes, and I'll go as far as to say some lessons need to be learned through trial and error and making some of these mistakes, which in some ways is not a mistake. It's just part of the process of learning and getting more clear, getting more refined. But the poor choices that I'm talking about are things that in your right mind, when you were calm and collected, you would never make that choice. But then when there is other people involved and you're afraid that they're going to disapprove or reject you or whatever other social pressures may be in the mix, then people hold back. They don't say the thing that they really want to say. They don't do the thing that they know is the right thing to do. That would be the realm of poor choices.
Got it. Well, I feel like that's a really challenging time right now to be authentic. There's a lot of anger, upset. The middle ground I feel like is kind of disappearing. You know what I mean? We're not hearing each other out. We're not hearing that side of the story. And I've experienced it a lot, and I try to remain authentic and open to other people's views. But at the end of the day, I also don't want to bow down to your view if I don't agree with it. You have to present a better argument, right? And so, but the cost of that has been very high for me personally, and to just speak my integrity with being kind and compassionate, but also saying, hey, you need to look at this, and this is why I'm shaping that view. So it's a very challenging time for people. I'm curious if you can cover this, you call it cover your basis, the framework for optimal decision making. And I would love that, because I feel like when I'm working with people, when I'm talking to a lot of people, they want the best thing, right? They always want the very best decision they can do. And what I found over time with leaders and high performers is they just do something. You know what I mean? They do the best thing that's available to them. And in the action is most of the growth. And over time, they'll say, 100 days later, it's like, I just tried 100 things. 50 of them were ridiculous and stupid. 10 of them were all right. 15 were okay. And then like these 10 were really good. And so now they have a lot to work with and move forward. So I'd be curious about the framework that you offer to people.
Well, let me make a quick note on that, and then I'll give an overview on what this framework is in terms of kind of a quick overview. But I was thinking for the high performer that tries 100 things, and like you said, 50 of them work, 15 flop terribly, and there's some like neutral 25. I don't know if I did the math right. I think I'm missing 10. And with all that, if the value is, hey, I want to grow, I want to see what's possible. I want to know what's optimal. If that value is at the core of that person, then it's not about the quote unquote mistakes or discovering that something doesn't work. It's the very fact that he's being true to his value of personal growth. And this is just a vehicle in getting there. So it's not, so that my framework, maybe this is a good segue, which is the framework is not about making a decision and not making any mistakes. It's not like a guarantee type of, hey, if you follow my 4-step formula, you're going to just arrive flawlessly. You're not going to get hurt. There's going to be no regrets. What I am offering is the framework will definitely decrease the probability of headache and heartache that you could avoid because you thought it through.
Tim,
So,
I just want the magic pill, man. I don't want to have to take, I just want the magic pill 100, it's like shooting a basketball shot. I want 100% of the shots to go in. Well, I appreciate you framing it like that. And that's how we know like it's an honest framework, right? Because I feel like a lot of the stuff out there is like, this is the perfect foolproof system, never fail. And that's the words I use very consistently is like applying this process optimizes and increases your probability greatly. Without it, you're not going to have that same probability. So it's a really great frame to put it in. And the key is action too, right? Like do it.
Yes. And there is necessary pain. And then what I would argue, there is some extra bonus pain that really could have been avoided if you just took a few seconds to think through what you're doing. And so this book will hopefully avoid some of the extra pain, but there is necessary pain to go through when we do make the optimal choice.
That's so funny. I actually, when I was in cars, I worked in cars a long time ago, and we would sell them. And it was like the wild, wild west with these guys. They came from like a very fascinating backgrounds, very eclectic group of people. And when we would do something stupid and pay money for it, I would just call it the stupid tax. Whatever we did, it was like an extra bonus tax for being a dummy that you have to pay. And it's just a part of playing that game. So I don't know why I want to chime in with that. It just reminded me of the stupid tax. So please continue with the framework.
Well, please, let's not pay stupid taxes. That's ideal. If people can use the framework, there's going to be a lot less stupid tax that gets paid. That being said, let me jump into the framework. So the framework is essentially a type of protocol or a way to think through any sort of decision. And it applies for big decisions, little decisions, and everything in between. As you can probably guess, the little decisions, you may not need the full bandwidth of the framework to arrive at a decision, but definitely the ones that I think my readers are interested in your audience is the big ones. It's the ones that have like real severe consequences depending on what direction they decide to go. And so the framework is going to be really helpful for those kind of decision situation challenges. And simply put, there's 4 parts, what I call the 4 pillars of the framework. And essentially they're questions. There are 4 questions that you're asking yourself before you decide to do anything. So pillar number 1 is your emotions, your feeling. And the question that you ask is, what are my emotions telling me? And I start with emotions because it's the thing that's going to hit you the fastest. If it's going to be important, if it matters to you, you're going to feel a certain way. The more important it is, the stronger you're going to feel about it. And we're talking anywhere from anger to sadness to joy, disgust, anything, right? Any sort of feeling that comes up, it's as a result of something that's important. So a lot of times, I don't know if it's culture, that there's certain cultures that are very, they don't like feelings, or they don't like select feelings. Let's just put it that way. There's taboo feelings that people should not feel or express. And I make the argument that the feelings are not the problem. The feelings are your friends. Your feelings are telling you something really important. Kind of like your car analogy. In a way, it is the engine light on your dashboard. And I mean, you could put a sticker over it and just pretend that the light never came on, but who's that really going to screw over? You, right? Like you're going to be in the middle of the freeway with the next rest stop is in 200 miles. And that's when your engine's going to blow up.
Yeah, that's when you pay the stupid tax.
That's right. Stupid, stupid. Yeah, that's right. And so emotions is one of those things where I'm like, hey, if you're feeling it, it must be important. Take a little time to understand what the feeling is trying to tell you. And I actually go through the seven universal feelings, and there's a function behind every single feeling. There's no random feelings. Like feelings all serve a purpose. There's a function behind it. And I'll use the one that's probably most common for people would be anger, as we talked about our political climate. Anger is a very strong one that people face. And anger, bottom line, it's about justice, right? Anger is about justice or injustice. We feel anger when something doesn't feel fair, right? Something is wrong. And so anger is something that gets triggered in our brain that tells us, hey, you need to fight for this. Like you need to fight for what's right. You need to change what is wrong. Sometimes it's about protection. It's about making sure that you keep yourself safe. So if anger is the thing that's popping up for you, you got to ask the question, what is the injustice? What is the thing that you feel is unfair or it should not be that way? And that can get you a whole lot closer to what's really going on rather than just acting on the anger without much thought. I elaborated a lot, but there's pillar one. Pillar number two is values of self, which is what is meaningful and important to you. And all of us have a different configuration in terms of like what really matters to us and what doesn't. And some of it is these kind of lofty ideas about integrity, loyalty, adventure, right? Some of these kind of abstract type of values. And then there's smaller things like your preferences. I prefer strawberry ice cream over chocolate. That's the truth. So I value strawberry over chocolate, right? So it could be something small as well. But that goes into the personal growth work. Do you know thyself? If you know yourself, then you have a metric to compare your decision making. Is it aligned with what matters to me? Or am I putting on a false self and acting kind of acting the fool and being someone that I'm not? And if that's true, why? Why are you doing some of those things? So the values of self is really important as a metric. Pillar number three is values of others, meaning that in most of our situations, it involves other people. And just because it's important to you doesn't mean it's important to them. So it's important to ask the questions and get to know, hey, how can I create a win-win situation, ideally, when I make this decision? Can I incorporate and care about what other people care about? And so that's pillar number three. Pillar number four is, yeah, go ahead.
Do you distinguish like family and friends in that, or community in general, or kind of weave them all in? And then like, you know, if you're going to make a decision, you have a family, you want to think about what their values are and things like that. Also the community, and broadly, it's great because it invites cooperation and mindfulness of others and how it benefits. And if it doesn't pass that, you know, litmus test there, and that decision is harming others in some sort of way, at least at this point, you can kind of factor that in. So how can I, you know, because that might shift your same idea, but shift it a little bit so it's more cooperative for the environment, you know, because my community is going to be different than your community or family or friends or whatever the scenario is. And so when you consider that, I think it gives an opportunity to really make it a more cohesive and cooperative decision.
True. Yeah, because I don't want this framework to be, how can I be the most selfish possible and get everything that I want, right? Like that's not the framework. The framework is, hey, how can I make the optimal decision? Meaning that it's a win-win kind of situation. It blesses me, but it definitely blesses other people as the optimal. Of course, I know that there's situations where it's not always the case, and we're going to have to make tough calls. Leaders always have to make those kind of tough calls where it's not a cute red bow over the present, neatly wrapped. But at least you're considering it. That's part of the framework. At least you're thinking about other people and how your decisions are going to impact them. So that's why pillar three is really important. Beautiful. And then lastly, right, the part four or pillar four is what I lovingly call reality factors, which is like, this is just what is, essentially. So the analogy I always use is gravity, right? You don't have to believe in gravity. You may not understand gravity, but if you walk off a cliff, you will experientially know gravity because Guts would be on the ground, right? Those are certain things that are not about opinion or preference. It's just about the reality. These are things that you want to consider. And I kind of group in there cultural norms, your environment. There's just other things, tax law, whatever, right? There's just certain things that are just there that we may want to consider as a data point when we make a decision, because there are reality factors in whatever setup we're in. And then when you take all the data points, the kind of pillars 1 through 4, then naturally, or my hope is, naturally, you're going to come up with some options. Some good options, some mediocre options, some poor ones, but you're going to come up with some options. And through that process, when you're considering those data points, and then you refer it back to your values of self, then you have the optimal decision for this situation. And is it going to work out 100%? Not necessarily, but at least you gave it the due diligence to make the best choice you could, considering these factors. And that's the framework.
I love that. That's awesome. It's super simple and concise, and I feel like everything good and meaningful as far as tools is always simple. I like to give the analogy of strong legs, do squats. You know what I mean? It's simple, it works. Obviously, do them right or you get yourself injured, but you know, works really, really well. And so, a lot of people I've never really heard of a decision making framework. I have read some books and articles back in the day. I can't even remember now about, you know, how to make decisions and things like that. And when I think about it, I think of it mixing a little bit of intuition with the emotion of my vision, right? Is the vision I can create aligned, or is this decision within my integrity? You know, what's the highest integrity this decision? What would it be if I'm in my integrity? If I'm taking into account what is in the other person, all the environment, you know, what is the best decision? But there are also big decisions in people's lives, like if they're gonna get a new job, or how they design their life, or are going through a struggle, you know. And so I think in your book here, you talk about courage and working through fears. And I feel like if we want to expand as a human being, we're always expanding into our potential, right? You know, actually, I'll give you this example. It's like from extreme sports, I would be training people to do very dangerous tricks, right? It's a limit of their skill. Like, do you want to do a backflip over this 60-foot jump, or do you want to try this very hard trick on your snowboard down a rail, and you could be toast? And so the decision when to do it, what kind of mindset you're in, the courage to kind of push your limits and abilities. As an athlete, they tend to do that. And I feel like the general public often, they don't really push their boundaries very much. And when I was teaching extreme sports, it's like, it's preparation, dedication, mindset. So once you're kind of like pushing that thing, you're like, all right, did you prepare? Are you in the right mindset? Is it possible? Can you get in the state where you believe it? You know, you need to have that bit of courage, but you don't want to go way outside your realm of, like, you've never hit a 10-foot jump. So don't try the 60-foot jump yet. You're going to kill yourself. So, you know,
that would be a stupid tax, right? That would be a stupid tax move.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And that's going to cost you. It's going to be, you're going to probably end up having some pain or some injuries. And so with all that kind of muddled example that I've given you, I'm curious how you would recommend applying the framework to people who are maybe trying to make a big decision in their life. They want to pursue their, like, a vocation. A lot of people are in shifting, right? A lot of lost jobs, a lot of reevaluating their life from the top bottom. Like, Tim, my life just exploded. Like, how can I start to integrate this framework and the courage piece to kind of at least start to move my life in a more optimal direction?
I don't want to be unsympathetic. So I know when people are in that dark place where, like you said, their life has just literally or figuratively exploded, and they're not really sure if there's any good from what's happening. It is hard. It is really hard to see the good and to move forward. That being said, I think that's why this framework exists, because the framework is not about like how you feel and think, or what's happening in the world. It's kind of cutting out all the unnecessary noise of the panic or the fears, and saying, hey, let's actually work through the feelings. Let's work through the values, and work through these reality factors to make the best decision that I can. And sometimes your options are great. I'm not gonna BS with you. They're not great options at times, but there's still something optimal that you can do. And I don't want to be overly optimistic, but I also want to say that the silver lining with what's going on in our world that is really just being shaken from the ground up is that people are forced to think about what they want to do with their lives for the first time. And it's forcing them to reevaluate because as human beings, we are typically creatures of comfort, and our brains are programmed that way that if it's comfortable, then what is it? Don't fix it if it's not broke kind of idea. Like just keep doing it. Just keep doing what you're doing, even if it's completely subpar, below your potential. But if it doesn't hurt, if it seems like it's still working, then keep doing the 9 to 5 job, or keep doing this thing that you can do, but it's really below what you're capable of or your dreams. And because of all this shaking and disruption, this is a great time to leverage this shaken upness and ask yourself the real important questions. What is it that I want? What is going to make my life matter in terms of the way that I live it? So I don't necessarily think it's all tragedy. It's all bad. I think it actually forces brakes on people's lives that have been in the hamster wheel, quite frankly, for maybe decades. This is all they've known. They've never really questioned it any other way. My dad used to do that. My granddad used to do it. But now that what's going on in the world is like, oh, well, that's just not an option right now. Like, that's not how we're going to operate. Then it forces people to grow. Well, I take that back. Growth is a choice. You can't be forced to grow. You have to choose to grow. And this is an opportunity people can take to do it.
I love all that. Very well said. Why growth is a choice. I'm kind of making a note here. It's so true. It's like you can kind of hang on and get dragged like behind a bunch of horses and be like, I am not going to let go no matter what. And that's a really good analogy about don't fix it if it isn't broken. And with doing 430, 40 podcasts, what I've noticed when people have like an awakening or, basically the idea that I don't really like my life now. I just did it. And then it's like, I prefer my life now because I built it by design, by conscious choice, by my own definitions, my own value sets. There was 9 times out of 10 was a catalyst, injury, an illness, loss of a job, a loss of a partnership, something traumatic happened. And we're getting that as a global community right now because, what I've said from the beginning about this, the COVID thing, it's giving us an opportunity to extend our compassion, right? So we've got a certain amount of deaths that are happening. It's tragic. All death is not ideal, especially if it's someone that's close to you, and it's a part of life. So we know that. But we also know, and we've known for a long time, 9.1 million people die of starvation each year. 9.1 million, which trumps the COVID by a long shot. And as a society, we do have an opportunity to change that with a very simple randomity. It's not like we need to invent something out of nowhere, right? And so it's kind of like a reassessing, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, this isn't great. That's also not great. Okay, take a pause, sit. Where do I fit into this? Where am I just, going along because it's easy? And it's like a global catalyst. So many people are getting shaken up to reevaluate. And the wonderful thing about that is it's going to create so many opportunities for collaboration. And it might be simpler, and it might not be the way that you imagined it, and it might not be perfect, but it'll go on like fundamental needs, because if you don't have your basic needs taken care of, you got to figure that out. Then you're going to base it also on your values. And I feel like it's this competition mindset that we've had with our cultures and different things that have really been challenging. Like you said at the beginning, like think about win-win. How can this support the community? How can this support the person that I'm with? And so what I'd like to ask is, what's your take on the courage aspect and overcoming that fear and like kind of stepping out, or either doing it consciously, or even if it's, by force and you're like, okay, this sucks. I'm going to move through the issue. I'm not going to ignore it. And I like how you said, like, it might be terrible. And I say that too to people, is like, it might be challenging. But if you think about it, like I've given some of my clients this thing, I'm like, well, just imagine, you go blind, right? And you're blind for 5 years, and you've got $10 million in the bank, and they say, okay, well, you can keep that $10 million, or you can have your sight back and you're homeless. You start from scratch. Everybody takes the sight because they know they have the capability to build. We're not engaging our full potential, but it doesn't need to be just the acquisition of material things. It needs to be the building of a meaningful vision, and creation by your own definition. And that might look different for every single person.
Great thoughts, great thoughts. With courage, which is one of the last chapters in the book, I put that in there because even if you know the right answer, you know the right thing to do, it doesn't mean you'll do it. Humans are weird like that. I'm telling you, we're pretty irrational creatures. Like, even if the answer is right in front of you, we may not pull the trigger still. And so I put that courage piece in there because without the courage to take a risk and follow through with this decision, it was kind of for nothing. I mean, you went through all this work to identify, this is what I want to do, this is what I need to do. But if you don't do it, then you don't see any of the fruits of that decision. And so my chapter really talks about understanding the sub-layer, the deeper layer of the fear. And again, it kind of goes back to the emotions. With fear or anxiety, it's really about protection. It's about keeping something potentially terrible from happening. And it's about control. Fear is really about control. It's about preventing something terrible from happening or harmful. But sometimes our brains are a little bit too sensitive to potential flight, that we will rather just not take a risk to guarantee that we don't get hurt. When in fact, that's not even a guarantee. That goes back to the indecision. Part of indecision is just the fear of messing up or the fear of making a mistake. But indecision is the decision. It's a decision to not do anything. And sometimes it could delay the pain, or it can just elongate the pain by not facing what it is that you need to do. So I really illustrate that in the book, and understanding what is it that your fear is trying to protect you from, and does it actually make sense? Like, when you say it out loud, like, does it actually make sense? Or is there a lot of what ifs, a lot of hypotheticals that would have to, like, all the stars would have to align for that to happen, for this worst case scenario to actually go down? And sometimes just the act of talking it through, either with a trusted other, with yourself, writing it down, most of our fears are not very probable. Possible, maybe, right? But not probable. And sometimes just by doing a little bit more research, because there are some unknowns about the consequences, ask some questions. Like, if there's something you're not really sure about before you pull the trigger, it's okay. Go ask some questions. The last thought I have about courage is, when you go through the framework and you did the work, right? Did the hard work of really thinking through, hey, is this something that I want to do? Is this the best choice? There will come a certain level of confidence built into that decision. Like, it's not off a whim. It is very well thought out. And if the outcomes isn't the way that you hoped it would be, it is not a fault of your own. It's not because of some haphazard, impulsive decision. It's, well, maybe I ended up missing something, but I did the best that I could. And there's some level of dignity and pride that you get by knowing that I did the best that I could. And most people couldn't say that, looked at themselves in the mirror and be like, I did the best that I could. No, I really didn't. Like, I definitely took some shortcuts. I didn't really do my best. With the framework, I think it really increases that confidence in knowing you did the best you could. You made the best choice with the information you had at your disposal.
Amazing. I absolutely love all that. I think it's so on point, and especially the idea of, like, just addressing your fears. And with the creatives, especially, I like, because the creatives, they deal with this, especially. I go, okay, what's the worst case scenario, right? And they kind of write it down if they want to do art or music or whatever the case is. And I say, well, let's just imagine that you put out this piece of work that you wanted to do, whether it's a new business or something, and everybody you love send you a handwritten letter about how terrible and awful it was and why you should quit immediately. Now, if you can get to the place, and I don't know how to do this, but if you can get to the place of peace in yourself to do it anyway, that's like the ultimate. That's not going to happen. But what's important is that you're doing the thing and you're listening to your gut, because you know that's what you need to listen to, because you might not please your parents, you might not please other people. And you know, you talked a little bit about the culture thing, and I just remember going to Burning Man, and you know, particularly the Asian culture, there's the camp we were in, I had like 4 people and they were telling me about their childhoods, and I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, that's so, I was like, holy smokes. I was like, you know, but like for me, I had like this ability to experiment, to really go outside the lines. And they're like, we didn't have that. It was very regimented, pretty ruthless. And you're getting a doctor, you're getting this, you're getting that. And I was like, whoa, you know? And so the idea to disappoint family, right? And to go against, because people and kids, they love their families, right? They respect their families. And so some people and cultures, it's much more intense. Same with some of my Indian friends and some of the Indian clients I've had. Their culture was a bit more intense, where everyone's a dentist, a doctor, a lawyer. And you want to do something like, I'm going to go into business for myself and invent this thing. They're like, well, how guaranteed is that? You know what I mean? Is that a guaranteed thing? Because this is guaranteed over here. And so for them to make that decision comes with a lot more emotional weight and a lot more emotional challenge, you know? And so everybody kind of goes through something that's a little bit different, but I feel like if we can merge the feeling and emotion of our honest self, our integrity, with understanding the factors and the risks, and then kind of drawing it out and then taking them head on, right? And just addressing them head on. It's what we can control. Right. And I like to say, like, okay, yeah, we always think about the failure and how that could work. But what if it works out? Or what if you fail and it's not as bad as you thought? Because then that gives you a step and an experience to try again and try again. And you're going to build up your confidence, and your community and your family and your friends are going to see that. And I've had this time and time again with people where they move into that and they didn't have the support initially, but it was gained as they gained the respect through the tenacity and through the will and through the vision that they created for themselves. They say, oh, well, they couldn't see the vision. Well, it wasn't their vision, right? It's only your vision. So that's where it comes. It's up to you to get into that integrity. You know what I mean? To get into that piece. And, and it's actually been a very common thing that I've had in coaching, where people really didn't want to disappoint their family or their loved ones, or sometimes their spouse. And that's kind of how I frame it for them. You need to have direct conversations. You need to be very clear on what you're doing and why you're doing it. Right. And then writing it all down. And usually there's a path forward. There's a step forward that honors all parties. And I think it's really beautiful. So do you want to comment on that? That was kind of just more of a rant.
No, it's great. And I was just thinking, it goes back to the third pillar about valuing others. The people in your life that are what we call killjoys or naysayers, they don't want you to venture off too far from this unproven path, so to speak. It comes from really good intentions. Like, and there's something to be honored about that, where they're really speaking from their heart. They just don't want you to be a starving artist or whatever it is that they're afraid of. And I think it's so important to, like you said, like listen to your heart and understand what matters to you. But hopefully you love those people enough to understand what their fears are about, and to hear them out and validate that, hey, I do appreciate and I honor how much you love me. And you don't want me to go through this pain, like this unnecessary pain. And I'm also letting you know that I have thought this thing through. It's something that I need to do. If I don't do it, there's a part of me that's going to die. So I need you to know that my soul depends on it. I need to do this thing or pursue this kind of career path. I don't know what's going to happen to it, but I hope that you trust me enough to at least let me go, support me, right? Encourage me to try this thing out. And I don't know how often those conversations happen, because once the individual feels all this resistance and people are seeing all these negative vibes about what you're doing, then they're like, all right, well, screw you then. Like, if that's how it's gonna be, then right, cut out my family. Like, I don't need them. I'm just gonna do my own thing. I'm like, well, it doesn't really I mean, it works well for like soap operas and movies. Like it's very dramatic, right? But it's very painful in real life. Like I don't think you have to go that route. In outlier cases, sometimes you do, but in most cases, it's just a not a misunderstanding, but taking the time to understand one another could potentially reconcile the relationship. And it's about, hey, I support you. I may not support your ideas, some of your crazy things that you're doing, and out of love, I just don't think it's going to work out. But because I love you, because I care about you, how about it, right? And that's such a that just gives a whole new level of confidence when we're able to have those important conversations.
Yeah, that was really well said. And you know, my upbringing was a little bit different. Like same ideas, like it always comes from a loving place. But my dad couldn't see the vision that I had. And so it would kind of be shooting down my dreams, like that won't work, that won't work, that won't work.
Sure.
Because he wanted, you know, he's just like, well, do this path, and this path is, you know, construction or a plumber or whatever, you know what I mean? It's like this,
Yeah.
I understand this. I know that you'll be taken care of. Please do
Yeah.
this. And what I shared with him, I was like, because of his work and the opportunity that he has given me, I can see opportunities that his generation couldn't. Right.
Yeah.
And so
That's right.
when you understand from the person kind of feeling shot down because it was hurtful, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I know like a lot of
Yeah.
people that I spoke with, what they wanted to branch out, but they didn't want to hurt their parents or whatever it was. They didn't want to hurt them. And it's all this kind of it's an unfortunate thing, and it's interesting because it all comes from love. And so if we can understand that, right, and be honest and open, you know, we're gonna get farther. And like you said, if you get to that open space where they say, okay, you know what, go ahead and try and fail, but you know, at least we're having this open conversation, and we still have that connection. We're honoring our family connections, we're honoring our community, we're, you know, and we're honoring the opportunity we have if your parents are supporting you, or if you're in that situation where maybe your parents don't support you, and it's a different situation, but at least they're there mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. You know, in that way, you want to grow that connection, because if you are going out on a limb and you are trying to create something unique, or you're even actually, let's just cut any kind of like, you know, vision and like high hopes. If you're just trying to survive in this world, it's easier to do with family and friends, because it is hard enough as it is.
Preach.
I have
So
failed
true.
so many times. I'm sure it's going to happen more. But what I can say is that the relationship with my mom and my dad, and you know, it's been rocky at times, but I know that he's there for me, right? Probably has never seen the vision of life that I could imagine for myself. But I knew he was there for me, and life is challenging. And so when we work together, the more people we can work together with, whether it's our friends or family, it's going to make it more possible, more pleasurable. And when you fall, you don't fall as far as you might think you would. And if you do, you're going to have community help get you up. You know what I mean? It's not going to be the end of the world. So that's kind of like I don't know, like a hopeful rant, but you know, we're going for it. We're trying to get our dreams.
I
We're
love it.
trying to navigate family situations, culture.
Yes.
And I actually noticed too, interestingly enough, even your best friends, when you want to create the vision, it's not that they don't want you to succeed. It's just they can't see it either. So often I'll say, hey,
it's not their vision. Yeah, it's not their vision.
Right? They're like, oh, you know, I'm going to take this army job. I'm going to get this psychiatrist. I'm going to go write a book and start my own business. And be like, that's stupid.
Why? Why would you do that? It's so much easier way to make money. Yeah. Why would you do that?
Yeah, you're throwing everything away. You're throwing your life away. Oh God. Yeah.
And to be honest, even with the vision stuff, I mean, for myself, I wouldn't say that, hey, one day I woke up and this path opened up and I know this is where I want to go. This is what I need to do. I wish. I mean, that would be really nice. But I think life is so much more like GPS coordinates. Like you just kind of know what the next turn is. Like in 300 feet, make a right turn. Like that. That's kind of all I can focus on. And sure, I have this. I want to go to Disneyland. I want to go to this place, but I don't know. Like I don't have a roadmap to how I'm going to get there. But I have enough GPS coordinates to know my next step. And so sometimes, I mean, I'm going to throw my wife in the mix. Like when I talk to my wife, sometimes I throw out some of these grandiose ideas, and she's going to be the one that's like, so how's that going to happen? And I'm like, well, I'm not that far along yet. Like, I'm not really sure, but I just there's a fire in my soul. Like, I know that this was meant for me, but I'm not really sure yet. And then she's like, okay, well, whatever. Like, figure it out. And I know that she definitely means well. And I kind of joke with her. I'm like, wow, like, thanks for the vote, the vote of confidence. And she goes, well, you need to give me a reason to be confident. I'm like, all right, fair enough. I'm still working it out. But I'm just saying that to your audience because I don't want to give this impression that everyone has this really clear vision. Most people don't. It's a work in progress. But if you don't move, right, if you don't have the courage, you will never discover it. Like, it doesn't just fall in your lap. It is a work in progress. It gets formed, it gets shaped, it gets molded in the process of being in action.
100%, super well said, and I 100% agree. We really often only know the one step ahead of us. If we're in a terrible space and depressed and hate everything, just get through that day. It's a win. Don't be hard on yourself. If you're moving towards something you're passionate about, start with doing a little research, brainstorming, some curiosity, a little bit of action here and there. And then for you, it's like you have this inner feeling, and so many people have it, but you've now engaged and got to another step, and you're like, you know what, if I got here, that ability starts to expand. Like in my snowboard, when I first started, it's great for me to turn. That was my first goal. Then I hit a jump, and now I'm okay. Well, I'm going to be able to do a double backflip one day. It's like, well, you can't even do one backflip right now. It's like, but I know I can't. It's going to get there. And so, if we give ourselves 10-year dedication to anything, like if you have no musical talent whatsoever, you've never played the piano, which is like one of the hardest instruments, and you practice 2 hours a day for 10 years, you can be pretty damn good in 10 years. And I have heard it's pretty hard to learn that even as an adult, but let's just say or guitar or something else,
10,000 hours. I think that's what they say, right? You become very proficient if you put 10,000 hours into any
exactly.
craft.
And so, if you're putting that toward your vision and you're just doing what you can, you want to be a writer, you just write a little bit each day. But that's even visionaries, they have this goal, but it's going to take them years to get there. And they start by taking the step. I know this is possible 10, 20 years. I've been sharing this story recently. I got to find it because I remember reading it a long time ago. But apparently one guy in like the Middle East somewhere, I don't know exactly, but there's two villages and they were separated by a mountain or something. And he like chiseled the way through the mountain and made a road over like a 40 or 50-year time span. You know what I mean?
By
and
himself?
By himself. Yeah. Basically.
One man?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Man. I mean, they just, he
hardcore.
Yeah. Right. The most hardcore. So he's just like, yeah, I'm going to go chisel this son of a gun down. And so imagine you put 40 years, right? And it just needs to be a direction. Just take that step, right? Navigate life, because life is going to throw you curveballs every single day. It's never going to be exactly safe or perfect most of the time. So navigate that, but keep chipping away at the things that you're passionate about, because over time it's going to become more clear and your vision's going to grow with your capabilities, with your skills, right? Like if you built one business up, you're going to be able to do it again. If you built skill in one thing, you're going to be able to build it over here. You're going to know the time, effort, dedication, mindset, perseverance it's going to take. So this has all been fantastic. I want to ask too, and chime in on that if you want, but I want to make sure I ask about ownership and self-trust, the conclusion, because I think that is such an important piece.
Ownership and self-trust. Let's start with ownership. So ownership is, as the name implies, taking responsibility for your choice. And that is so important to take on, because when we don't take ownership, if we don't take responsibility for the choices we make, then we actually give power away to other people. We give power away to our circumstances. And the reality is, no matter what's going on in your life and whatever the circumstances are, no one can take away your power to choose in how you respond, how you react to something. And something that popped up in my head as you were speaking about, honing the craft and putting 40 years into digging a tunnel, or whatever this goal may be. I was thinking that definitely applies to careers, skill sets, those type of things. But there's something, in my personal opinion, that's even grander, so to speak, is the man or woman that you become in that process. Who do you want to become? Who would you be proud of? What kind of mark, what kind of legacy do you want to leave because you lived on this earth. And that is a day-to-day, moment-to-moment type of chiseling that when you set that intention, that commitment. Let's say, for example, you want to be generous. Like generosity, you're like, I'm really stingy. I'm always fearful. I don't want to pay for nobody's meal. Like that's just how I do things. But I would love to be generous. I want to be that kind of person. Well, then it starts with one decision at a time. You may not always pay for your friend's food because you think they're always like mooching off of you. But every once in a while, you may be like, hey guys, drinks on me, right? Or dinner's on me. You're flexing your generosity. Like you're flexing that part of development that will come over time. And so when that's clear as to who you want to become, you can then evaluate your decisions kind of back to the values. Are you becoming more and more that way? Like when I speak this way, if I want to be more loving, like when I communicate this, is this a loving way to do it or is it not? If it's not, okay, I can work on that, which I have a whole chapter on rebounding, which is kind of getting back to choosing again, because it's never too late to make a better choice. Now I'm really getting off topic, but back to ownership. So ownership and self-trust, they go together, right? Because with ownership, which is taking responsibility for your choice, then you are really taking the power back and saying, hey, regardless of what happens, I'm in charge of how I respond. And then you start trusting yourself that you're a shot caller, that you're someone that follows through with what they say and do. And there's nothing that will crumble your self-trust quicker than when you become this kind of inconsistent person. Like you say one thing, but then you get kind of lazy, or you get tired, so then you don't follow through on that. And when you become someone that's not a man or woman of your word, then at some point you stop trusting yourself. Like you're not even sure if you're gonna do it. Like you say, like, yeah, I'm gonna do this, and you're like, BS, you're not gonna do that. Let's be real. And those thoughts start coming in, like kind of on the autopilot. They're like, dude, you kidding, man? You can lie to your mom, but you can't lie to yourself. You're not going to do that. And then you just start doubting, right? So I think seeds of doubt are planted when we live out of integrity. But how do you live in integrity? Well, you take ownership. You take ownership of the decisions you make. And as a byproduct, self-confidence and self-dignity builds as a result of it.
Amazing. 100% true. I love that. And again, it's so simple, but often can be very challenging to put into practice. And I know that through my life, I've seen that. I've seen that through the work experiences, the friends, the travels that I've had, where people really suffering are just often out of integrity in multiple ways.
Sure.
And at least if you're in integrity, you have inner peace. It's like, how do I have inner peace and enlightenment? Don't do things that are out of your integrity. And if you are doing that, stop doing that now, and ask for forgiveness in whatever way you want, and make it up. If you just screwed over your buddy $1,000, probably pay him back. You know what I mean?
Mind-blowing idea.
Yeah,
Make
right. And
things
then
right. Yes.
make things right. Yeah. And then look for opportunities to do the opposite, to support. And I just say it's like life affirming, like look for ways to encourage, to support, to help. And, you're going to have a much different feeling in your body, much more integrity, and your vision will grow with what you want to do for yourself, because you're going to be in a different energy. The energy to kind of like rip people off and depress and like just get by, or do like, it's a bad way to say, but say meaningless work. You're like, I don't give a shit about my job. A lot of people do that. Well, if you're in that and you have meaningless work, that kind of apathy is going to go into other parts of your life. And there are other ways to make income that might be more of contribution to the planet and more aligned with who you are. You just got to start looking, right? Because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just as you have your regular job, just spend like half an hour just searching for other jobs and write it down, see what aligns with you, write down your values. And as you do this, you're doing the next step, and the universe responds. The universe will respond, but it's not going to respond by you doing nothing, And so I just say, don't give it a goose egg, don't give it a 0, give it a little bit. And over time, you're going to change your full direction. This has been wonderful. I think all of this is so helpful and simple and practical and true. Is there anything that you wish that I'd asked you, or that you want to discuss before we close it up?
I just want to mention that even the lack of inner peace is a gift. We're trying to avoid this like turmoil or guilt or whatever it is. That's a gift. It's telling you that something is not right. And without that signal, you wouldn't make it right. And at the end of the day, when you make it right, you're the one that is blessed. And then you are the one that becomes a blessing as a result of that change. So even the quote unquote negative feelings, they're only negative if you get no purpose from it. But if you're able to extrapolate the meaning of, okay, what is it trying to tell me and what can I do with it? Oh, even the things that feel bad have a purpose that can turn your life around only if you'll let it. So I just want to comment on that last thing you said. But otherwise, I think we ran through a lot of the basic things. Of course, there's a lot more golden nuggets in my book, Choose Better. I'm hoping people pick it up because I think it can change people's lives.
Yeah, I love that. And the last comment about, the lack of inner peace, it's kind of like putting your hand on the stove, it's like hot. So take it off. As I'm like teaching my, 15-month-old daughter, I was like, stop trying to touch this. It's going to hurt you. But I was like, all right. Like yesterday, she wanted to walk in the snow barefoot. She's barbecuing, wants to be out there and she's experiencing the cold, so it's giving her the signal. I got to go inside now and put on the jacket that I won't let dad put on. I was like, fine, you bum. We're going outside. She's cold.
Go.
And then, so I let her, she's like wants on the ground, is yelling at me. I'm like, all right, here you go. You know what I mean? And then she's like, oh, cool. Do you know what I mean? Comes back in.
Want the jacket now? Yeah, you want the jacket now? Yeah.
So it's the same process for adults, it seems, you know what I mean? But we can be a little bit more stubborn. This has been great. I appreciate you. I encourage people to check out your website and your book. If they want to dive deeper, where should they go?
Well, there's a lot of different things that I'm doing right now. So if you want the latest, want to connect with me, you can go on my professional website at www.timyen.com. And I also created an Instagram page, Choose Better Consulting is the handle, where I actually take different quotes from the book, but I give you the insider scoop behind some of these nuggets in hopes that it brings value to your listeners, to your audience.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate your work. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Make sure to go to Matt Belair, sign up for the email list, become a member because censorship is real. The coaching group has started. So if you guys want to check out the new coaching group, just go send me an email, matt@zenathlete.com, leave a review and all that kind of good stuff because, it's a battle out there these days. I appreciate you. I appreciate Tim for coming on. Thanks so much and having a great evening. Peace.